Thanks for tuning in and welcome back to the box. This is the inside of the conversion of our 2013 Mitsubishi Fuso FG that I'm very slowly turning into an overland camper. A couple of videos back, I bent up and welded the shower pan insert that sits just inside the door. But as it is a pan, it leaves the floor somewhat unlevel. So today, I'm going to try and do something about that. Now, as this is a pan, it is designed to collect and then direct water to the back where the pumps will suck it out and send it to the gray water tank. But that makes the next step a little bit more difficult because it's not flat on the bottom and we want it flat on the top. Everything in here has to be on an angle. In addition to that, the front sits underneath the fridge and the back slides underneath the toilet. So I've made this nice and straightforward for myself. All I need to do is make an insert that isn't the same height at the front as it is at the back. Has to be exactly the right height at the back so it can slip under the floor, and exactly the right height at the front so the fridge is level. The water needs to be able to drain through it, and it only needs to be strong enough to, well, hold up a human standing on it. That seems pretty easy, right? Oh, and I should also mention that the toilet needs to slide out over top, so it has to be exactly the right height so that doesn't catch. So how am I going to make all this work? Well, here's the plan. The pan is just shy of 48 inches long from one end to the other. If I make that in one piece, it will be trapped in place and we'll never be able to take it out because the fridge will hold one end in and the furniture will hold the other end in. So if I make a split in the insert just this side of the fridge, I'll be able to remove the back half without taking out the fridge. With the remaining distance that I have to span, we end up needing about 2.5 inches of height at the back and about 1 inch of height at the front. And strangely enough, that math just happens to work out to the size of a 2x4 cut on an angle. It's almost like I thought of that before. So here we have two 8-foot Cedar 2x4s cut in half. Let's see what we can do. Now, as for where we make the split in the floor, we need to make sure we get it in the right place. And oddly enough, the right number seems to be 42. Funny how often that number comes up, eh, Stephen and Caroline? Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, make sure at the end of this video, you watch this video, the truck tour of Molly 42. But back to the numbers, I need to start by cutting my 48-inch sections of 2x4 down to 42. And now we can start to multiply the wood. First step in multiplication, we're going to cut one piece into two on an angle, hopefully the right angle. To do this, I'm going to attach a piece of plywood to the side of the 2x4 on an angle, which will hopefully act as a guide to feed it through the table saw. Hey, what do you know, it works. After repeating that same cut 3 more times, we end up changing two 2x4s that were cut into 2 halves to make 4, now into 8 pieces that can make a flat floor. But wait, there's more. We're not done. I'm now going to cut each of those in half to make 16 pieces. Because although this is nice, the gaps in the floor are still a little bit too big. And so, like Groundhog Day at the table saw, we multiply the wood again, and again, and again. And that, instead of 8 pieces, leaves us with 16. Now we have twice as many pieces with twice as many spaces at half the size. Oh, and a whole lot more sawdust. So now that I've got the lengthwise slats done, we need to do something to hold them all in place. And that is where the leftover 6-inch pieces come in. These 6-inch pieces are going to get cut into 28 pieces each, and I have 4 of them. That is a lot of cutting. Correction, 21 pieces, not 28. There will be 3 pieces across and 7 pieces along. I'll end up with something roughly 1 inch by hopefully exactly 3/4 of an inch. Still 84 pieces that I need to go and cut now. Now I'll save you the agony of watching another music montage of me cutting up pieces of wood into smaller pieces of wood by just telling you that each of those pieces of wood are now a smaller piece of wood. These are 1.5 inch by 1 inch by 6 inches, and that's what you get when you cut up 4 leftover pieces of scrap. Now next, stacked in threes, using my square to set the cut depth, I've cut them in my horizontal bandsaw 3 at a time. This saw clamps the pieces in place and has a much skinnier blade, so I lose less material with each cut. And just like that, I'd love to tell you that I cut all those into perfect 3/4 inch long spacers. But in fact, this entire time I've been lying to you. I've been using metric. So they're 19.5 millimeters. And here is why that's important. Because of the lumber dimensions that we start with and the amount that the saw takes off every time we make a cut, what we've ended up with is 16 pieces that are actually 17 millimeters wide each. In between those, we have 15 spaces, and each of those spaces needs to be 19.5 millimeters so that our overall width comes out to about 600. And no, I did not memorize all of that. It's written right here. If you did that math quickly in your head, something doesn't add up, and that's because the last 2 spaces are on the outside. They're not quite 19.5 because the side of the pan is tapered, so they vary a little bit. That said, even starting with 2x4s, it's still easier to do in metric. So with 16 pieces here and 84 pieces here, we have turned 2 2x4s into 100 pieces of wood. Now that I've cut it all up, I have to stick it all back together into one piece, minus the sawdust. Whew, that's a lot. If you're enjoying this video and you want to help support the creation of content like this, make sure you hit the thumbs up button, hit subscribe if you haven't already, check out the links in the video description, and if you feel like it, hit up that QR code. Thanks. Speaking of sawdust, before I can stick it together, each of those pieces has 12 edges, and that means I need to sand 1,200 edges? Well, there's nothing to do but to start doing it. The nice thing about doing this in cedar is, well, it's not difficult to sand, and at least it smells nice. I should mention, that's all I'm doing here. Just a quick sanding to knock off the bits left over from the edges of the saw cuts. That's a lot of dust. The last thing I need to do is knock the fluff off the long runners. Even though it's a lot more edge length, it's much quicker than the little blocks. And after a mere 400 years of sanding, it's now time to start securing it together using the blocks. And to do that, I'm going to use my brad nailer and some adhesive. Ironically, no more nails, because I have it and it needs to be used up. The brad nails that I'm using are 2 inches long, and that'll let me go through 2 runners and 1 set of spacers each time I put a nail in. That means each time I add a new runner and a spacer, I'm still nailing into the one before. In order to line everything up as I'm assembling it, I'll quickly mark a few lines across the top of each runner so I know where to place the blocks. And now the assembly begins. Each layer begins with a runner, 5 dabs of glue, and then 5 spacer blocks. When the next runner goes on, I nail it all in place, add another dab of glue, and then the pattern repeats. I have the square attached to the end so I can make sure that I'm not building a leaning tower of Pisa, and I regularly check the growing width to make sure that it's not getting wider at one end than the other. If one of my spacer blocks happens to be thicker or thinner than the 19.5 millimeters it's supposed to be, I can adjust by choosing a different block. It's really not a complicated build, but it's very repetitive. If you're building something like this, remember to check once in a while that you haven't run out of nails in your brad nailer. You'll go through quite a few. Well, now that my knees have an extra 100 years of wear and tear on them, there's one more thing that I need to do before I can test fit the shower floor, and that is cut some of it back out again. In the back corners here will be the shower drain pumps, one here and one here, and that means where the 2 pieces of wood go through here and over here, I need to trim them off. Don't screw this up now. Whew, and of course, this makes a few more edges that need sanding. I think this is 180 grit sandpaper, but for some reason the company only labeled the package, not the sheet. Useful. And the last little bit of dust. And of course, the answer to the question that everybody wants to know, does it fit? Well, let's find out. I'd say yes. And it even slides out. I've still got some final sanding to do, but I think for the fact that earlier today I had 2 Cedar 2x4s and now I have a shower floor, for just 35 bucks and some glue and nails, I'm doing all right. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, make sure you hit like, hit subscribe if you haven't already. Check out the links in the video descriptions. Check out all the other videos on this channel. But most importantly, come back next time. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you then. Man, this place is a mess.